Are you ready to take your Rancher Kubernetes skills to the next level? Well, in this video, I'm going to help you do just that as we embark on a number of day 2 activities leveraging Rancher as our Kubernetes platform. Hi, I'm Chris Muchler, Principal Enterprise Architect and Fractional CTO from Virtual Elephant, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. In this video, I'm going to show you how I am leveraging Rancher within my home lab as my primary Kubernetes platform to be able to deploy and leverage Kubernetes clusters within my environment. Now, I've already shown you how to deploy Kubernetes clusters using Rancher, but in this video, I'm going to show you how to deploy LDAP and authentication within Rancher to be able to grant different users various permission levels within your Kubernetes platform. In addition to that, I'm going to show you how we deploy a CSI using Longhorn for persistent storage, as well as deploying Prometheus and Grafana using the Helm charts that are built into Rancher itself. I'll show you also how you can leverage other Helm repositories directly into Rancher for all of your cluster needs. And once we've gotten all of this running, we're going to also be deploying InfluxDB as our new time series data metric database that we're going to be using for a number of different applications that we're going to be running inside of these clusters. And then finally, I'm going to show you how simple it is to upgrade the Kubernetes version for a Rancher deployed Kubernetes cluster. All of this and more is in this video, so let's get started. All right, we are going to jump right into my Rancher installation that I have running in the home lab. Now, this is still running as a Docker container. Honestly, I've found running it in a Docker container more reliable than trying to run it in Kubernetes and inside of a Kubernetes cluster. As I've said before, I have a bit of a thing about running something like Rancher inside of Kubernetes to then go and deploy additional Kubernetes clusters. It just feels a little bit like a chicken and the egg problem. Now, certainly if you're running Rancher inside of a virtualized environment, specifically if you're running it inside of a vSphere environment like I am, you have a number of things that are going to make it far more resilient than a typical installation that a Docker container might otherwise be troublesome for. So certainly we have persistent storage on the local VM itself. The storage for that local VM is backed by vSAN, which means that it has a storage policy associated with it. So in my case, it's a RAID 5 storage policy. So there are redundant copies of all of the data. In addition, if the physical node goes offline that the VM resides on, well, HA is going to take over for me. And if I begin to become resource constrained on that physical host, well, then I have DRS that can migrate the virtual machine for me. So in my opinion, running Rancher inside of a Docker container, even for a production grade environment, is really not that big of a deal. And it's certainly something you could consider if you don't want to run it inside of Kubernetes. But let's jump right in. You can see here on the screen that I have my Rancher installation running inside of my home lab. You can see that I actually already have a number of clusters that I've already deployed. You can see that I have this first cluster, Rancher CKA1, and that it's running 131.7. We're going to talk about that a little bit more in just a moment, why it's running a version behind. And then you can see I have these 3 other clusters, test, stage, and prod. This is for a project that I'm working on for graduating code through a pipeline and deploying it to different environments based off of which stage in the pipeline it finds itself. And then that Rancher CKA cluster is actually the cluster that I'm using as I am working on exercises, getting ready to retake the certification test in my path to getting my Kubstronaut, I think I'm pronouncing that correctly, where I get all 5 certifications passed this summer as a goal that I've set for myself. So this cluster is being used for that. It's running a version behind so that I can do an upgrade through Rancher, which we're actually going to do here in this video. So there are a few things that I want to cover in this video. The first is going to be hooking up Rancher to LDAP, similar to what I did for OpenShift. Certainly, you're going to want to have authentication into your environment if you're going to be building this out as a platform. After we do that, I'm going to show you how I've deployed Prometheus and Grafana within 3 of the clusters, and then we're going to show you how I deployed in the 4th. Once we have Prometheus and Grafana deployed, then we're going to work on deploying InfluxDB through Helm in one of the environments so that we can start to leverage it for some of the other application and system tools that I've been writing recently as part of my studying and just learning more and just trying to get better, right? We're always improving, continuous learning. I talk about that all the time and how critical it is. So you can see here, again, 4 clusters. We haven't done anything from an LDAP perspective, so we're going to go ahead and do that now. We're going to click on this users and authentication. You can see right now we just have the default admin account. We're going to come over here to auth provider. I am running LDAP, so we're going to pick open LDAP, and we're going to give it some information. So we're going to go ahead and give it the server name, which is LDAP 01 home virtual elephant.com, standard port, standard server connection. The distinguished service account name is going to be UID equal, and I got this written down, Kate's service, and then OU people, OU or DC home, DC virtual elephant, DC com, and then the service account password, and then the user search base is going to be OU equals people, DC equals home, DC equals virtual elephant, comma, DC equals com, group search base. This is what we need to change. OU equals groups, because we have that DevOps team group that we've created. DC equals home, DC equals virtual elephant, DC equals com. Okay, so that looks good. Okay, so let's just double check this. Okay, so username attribute CN, login attribute UID, search attribute is any of these, that's fine. It's really just going to be UID. And then, okay, that's all good. And then for the username, it is Kate's service, and then the password. All right, so now we should be able to come over here to home. We're going to log out. And we're going to log in as DevOps user 1. And now we are logged in. Now here we don't see any of the clusters because they don't have permission. So we're going to actually come back out here and log out. And we're going to log back in. We use the Kate's service account. And now we have access to all of this. We should be able to come over here. And we're going to put them as an administrator and a standard user. Just that. Okay, so we'll save. Now we will log back out. And we'll log in as our DevOps user 1. And now they have administrative rights to all of the clusters that we see deployed here. So now we have LDAP hooked up, and we've configured a user, one of the users in the LDAP group, to be able to have administrative rights within the environment as well. So now you can continue to add whatever LDAP users you have and then give them the appropriate permissions that they're going to need to be able to work within your Rancher environment and deploy Kubernetes clusters. But what we want to do is right now, we are going to stay as this DevOps user, and we are going to first show you that on the CKA, the prod, and this stage cluster, I actually have Grafana and Prometheus installed. And you can see I did it rather recently for one or two of the clusters. Others have been running for a bit of time since earlier today. But they have Grafana and Prometheus running. They also have the alert manager. So if we come over here and we click on our CKA cluster, we come down here to monitoring, you can see it shows us alert manager, Grafana, Prometheus, okay, here. And we can actually click on this and it will open up like the alert manager for us. It will also open up the Grafana dashboard for us as well. And we can see that we have, again, Grafana running with Prometheus, and it's grabbing some statistics and everything and metrics off of the clusters. So this is a relatively straightforward process. I will just caveat, and this is something I've talked about in the past, and if you check out the Project SignalWave GitHub page and you look at the installation guide there is directions on how to actually add an NFS CSI into the cluster. So I do have inside of this cluster, and I'll show you here, let's see, have it running inside of this NFS storage, not in the project, but inside the cluster. Let's go to the workloads, pods. You can see I have this NFS subdir external provisioner, okay, from the K8s.io registry. So I have installed NFS. It's backed up against, or it's pointing to my NFS server that I have running within the environment. And when I created that, it created a storage class for us using that CSI. So now we have a way to create persistent volumes within the environment. And I hooked up this NFS server to all 4 of the clusters. So if we come down here to our test cluster, which ironically I'm doing last here, but the test cluster does not yet have Grafana or Prometheus installed on it. So that's one of the next things that I want to do, after which I'm going to go and start installing InfluxDB as well as Longhorn within the environment. So we're going to come here to cluster tools. Okay, we're going to see a number of cluster tools that are available to us right out of the box from Rancher. Again, one of its strengths. You can actually see that Longhorn is one of those things, and we're going to do that right after this. But first, we're going to do monitoring on this test cluster. So we're going to go ahead and click install. We're going to tell it to just put it into the default project and that we want to customize the Helm options. This is critical. If you don't do this, it will deploy without leveraging any persistent storage. So we want to come down here, and now you can see we have under the edit options these 4 areas: General, Prometheus, Alerting, and Grafana. We're going to touch Prometheus first. We're going to scroll down to the bottom, and we're going to click Persistent Storage for Prometheus. Now it's going to say it's going to grab 50 gigs, and it's looking for that default storage class name that the NFS provisioner has created for us. NFS client, the access mode is going to be read write once. So then we're going to come over here. Don't click next, but come back up, click on Grafana, and you can see Grafana's storage is disabled by default. We want to enable it with a PVC template. It's going to grab 10 gigs. Again, the same storage class and the same access mode, read write once. Now we are ready to go. We can go ahead and hit next. We can see that it's going to just do some defaults. We don't have to worry about any of this. We're going to go ahead and click install. And now it's going to start installing Prometheus and Grafana using persistent storage. And in a moment, it'll pop up a little shell-like window inside of Rancher to show us the installation progress that it's going to be making. So we're going to go ahead and just let this run for a minute while it goes and deploys Prometheus and Grafana.
Thought I knew it all. What did I know? I was so stupid to ever let you go.
All right, so we can see here that Grafana is now installed with Prometheus, and that it took about 3 or 4 minutes for it to actually complete the process. So we'll go ahead and close this window. We're going to come down here. Now we see monitoring for this cluster, and we'll click this button, and it's going to show us our cluster in Grafana. And this is the default dashboard that you're going to get from Rancher, which gives you a bunch of information within it that you can actually go and see. And so you can see some other things that we can go and click to be able to see some additional information. Again, it's a great starting point from a dashboarding perspective to give you an idea of what's running within your environment. And so this is really kind of the first step to being able to operationalize Rancher and clusters that you're deploying within Rancher. Now, what I want to do next is I want to actually come back here. I'm going to close this Grafana window. I'm going to come back here to Home, and we're going to go to Clusters. And you can kind of see here on these 3 clusters that I've created for this pipeline project that I'm working on, a test, a stage, and a prod. You can see that they have only, let me come over here, actually, a better view, cluster manager. So you can see here, we've got, if we click on prod, we've got 3 nodes that are for the controllers and just 2 nodes that are for the workers. But if we look inside of our vSphere environment here, and we go to minimize this, let's see, that looks big enough on the screen. So come over here, that's our CKA cluster. We're really not playing with that right now. But you can see here in this folder, I've got the prod, the stage, and the test. So we look at the worker nodes. One of the things that I did was I gave them a bit more disk, actually 120 gigs of disk, because I want to be able to leverage Longhorn for storage, for persistent storage on these nodes. So we're going to go and leverage Rancher to actually deploy Longhorn next. So again, we're going to come back to our Rancher. We'll click on our test cluster first. We're going to come over here to cluster tools. Once again, right off of the main page, we see Longhorn. So again, Longhorn's a distributed block storage system. It is a CNCF project. So we're going to go ahead and put it in the default project. And we're going to want to customize the Helm options before the installation. So we can see here, we're going to use the default images. We are not going to be doing a private registry. We are going to look at some of the default settings to see what we might want to change. Okay, so snapshot count, that's fine. The data path, if you wanted it to be different, we're going to be fine there. Data locality. So I think we're going to leave all of these things. The over provisioning percentage is 100%. Minimal available by default is 25. So we're okay there. And I think all of these are going to be fine. We're going to leave these alone. So we're actually not going to mess with these. Okay, so, and I've not used Longhorn through Rancher before. I've always done it myself. So we're going to go ahead. This is one of the things I do want to change. So the default storage class for Longhorn is delete. We actually want it to be retain. So we want to retain the data if the persistent volume is disconnected so that we can later go back and reuse it. Other than that, we're going to leave that one alone. I think we're going to leave the services, everything here just as the default. Again, any other settings, I think we are all good. So we're going to come over here and go next. Okay, we look good there. And so now we're going to install Longhorn inside of our test stage, or sorry, our test Kubernetes cluster that we have running inside of Rancher. Again, it's going to pop up the system console window for us, and then it's going to run and show us the commands and the status. And then once it's done, we'll log into the Longhorn UI. So again, we're going to go ahead and just let this run. All right, so just that quickly, it looks like it's completed the Longhorn installation. Now you might be asking, Chris, why didn't we do Longhorn first and then leverage it for Prometheus and Grafana instead of, that NFS server that you have running in your lab? And certainly you could do that. You could certainly come in here and install Longhorn first and then use Longhorn as the persistent data volume for your monitoring cluster for Prometheus and Grafana. That would totally be fine. I guess just chalk it up to old habits. I'm used to putting those things out on that NFS server, and that NFS CSI being the first thing that I do on basically every one of the clusters that I've ever stood up over the last few years. So we're going to come over here. You can see now we have a Longhorn, and it shows us, what it is. We're going to go ahead and click it, and it should bring us up. So again, it's showing us that we have about 138 gigs of storage that is schedulable. You can see there's about 70 gigs that's reserved, and we're using about 20 gigs total across the cluster. Can look at the nodes. We can see that we just have the 2 right now. So one of the things that I do want to do is actually extend the number of workers and actually see that it gets brought in automatically to the Longhorn system as well. That's not something that I've tried testing in the past before, but obviously that should be something that works straight out of the box. But before we do that, we're going to come back over here and we're going to go to our stage, and we're going to do the same task all over again for the other 2 clusters. So again, the only thing we really changed here was this default setting there for the storage class. So go ahead and hit next, and then this will run for a quick minute or so, and then we'll do the prod cluster. And once we've done the prod cluster, then we'll go back to the cluster management view inside of Rancher, and we will extend the number of nodes in that test cluster to be able to see how Longhorn reacts to additional worker nodes being created and bringing them automatically into the system as it should. All right, so the stage cluster is done. So we'll come up here to our prod cluster, cluster tools one last time, Longhorn, into our default project, customize the Helm options, come down to your storage class, retain, go ahead and hit next, and we are good to go. So once this is done, we'll jump back over. So one of the nice things about Longhorn that I've seen so far is the ability to do backups and snapshots, something that I'm not currently capable of doing just out of the box with my NFS server. So it does give you a bit more functionality within your environment for your persistent volumes and everything. So this is one of the reasons why I'm starting to move to Longhorn as my primary CSI for all of my Kubernetes clusters that I run within my home lab. Since everything I'm doing right now is primarily VM based, it makes it very easy. Now, I haven't yet gotten it to work inside of OpenShift. I still have some work to do because of the default security, more strict security things that Red Hat OpenShift does out of the box. That things like when you boot your own through kubeadmin or initialize your own clusters through kubeadmin and deploy clusters through Rancher isn't happening automatically for you. But again, right, you're going to be able to have a lot of options depending on the platform that you choose. So we're going to go ahead and close this. Again, now we've got Longhorn. We'll just double check that even for so it looks like it's still reading some of the data in for these nodes. So we'll give that a few minutes, but certainly it's working here on our test cluster right now. So we're going to come back over here to the dashboard. We're going to leave that open. We're going to come back to Rancher. Going to come down here to cluster management. We are going to click our VE test cluster. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to actually just spin up or scale up an additional node in this cluster. Now the node spec for these worker nodes is relatively small. It's 4 vCPUs, 4 gigs of memory, but 120 gigs of disk. And again, these are just for testing things. I'm not running anything in these clusters long term right now as part of this project. So I've dedicated relatively few resources to them because I'm really leveraging the resources in the home lab for other things. But we'll go ahead and do that. So it's going to wait for the infrastructure. And if we click over here, we should actually see it start to deploy that new node here in just a moment. So there it says it's starting to create it. Come over here, we should see it here in a moment. There it is, it's queued, and there's the new node. So hopefully I don't get bit by the vCenter bug that's going on right now. I'm actually in the process of waiting for an update. The most recent version of vCenter server that I'm running has some sort of VPXD memory leak due to open sessions and everything. And so I'm having to actually reboot my vCenter server almost daily to be able to prevent certain issues from cropping up that really don't report in any sort of alerting in VROps or in the VMware or anything for the vCenter server appliance. So We're going to cross our fingers that this works out of the box because I did reboot the vCenter server first thing this morning. It's kind of become my just wake up, log into the lab, reboot vCenter, and then go about my day. So again, we'll just let this run here in the background while it adds the node. And once it's added the node and the node shows running, then we'll go back over to Longhorn and see that the amount of disk space allocated or available to the Longhorn system has grown as a result of there being a third node within the environment. All right, so the node is now showing online. It happened relatively quickly, 5-6 minutes to bring a new node into the cluster. So we're going to come back over here to Longhorn, and it looks like it's even already refreshed the page to show that there is more storage schedulable now, and it does. So it shows us now that we do have the 3 nodes that are all able to participate within the Longhorn cluster. All right, so that's outstanding. So what we'll do is we'll come back here. We won't show it, but I'll just go ahead and click because I want to keep all of these at the same configuration. So we'll go ahead and scale both of those up as well. And we're going to go ahead and let that run in the background. Now, on the test cluster, one of the things that I want to do is actually install InfluxDB, and I want it to use Longhorn as well. So we'll come over here to look at the storage policies. So now we have storage classes, we have Longhorn, and we have Longhorn static. Longhorn default, we should be able to see that it is set up correctly. Looks good. So we're going to come over here. And again, you can see the 2 persistent volumes that are NFS shares that we're leveraging within the environment. Look at the static one. Awesome. Okay. So I want to get InfluxDB running as a service within all of these clusters. So the first thing that I want to do is in the cluster, I want to look at the projects and the namespaces. Actually, I want to move this up to the default. I'll move that up to the default. Now, in this default project, I want to create a new namespace. We're going to call it services. So we're going to call this one, well, we're going to create services. So we'll create services. And we are also going to create another namespace called monitoring. And even though this isn't where Grafana and Prometheus is, this isn't where Prometheus and Grafana exist because of the way that they are deployed via Rancher, we're going to go ahead and create them. So in my kubeadmin cluster that I stood up on my own, I have a monitoring namespace. Inside of that monitoring namespace, I have Grafana, Prometheus, and InfluxDB all running side by side with one another. We're going to go ahead and just put InfluxDB in this monitoring environment here. All right, so now that we have the cluster set up the way that we want, the next thing that I want to do is actually install the InfluxDB application to be able to leverage it for additional metrics and time data within the cluster. So one of the strengths that I've talked about in the past of Rancher is its ability to integrate with Helm natively within the environment. So you can see here, when we go to the apps section inside of your cluster, you're going to see a number of charts that are already available to you to be able to install via Helm in the background. So all sorts of things that you can actually go ahead and deploy. Now, InfluxDB isn't one of those things that out of the box, it's right there for you to do. So if you want to add additional Helm repositories, you can just come over here to the repository section and do create. And then here we're going to give it a name. We're going to call it the InfluxDB. And then we are going to give it a URL, and it's HTTPS, okay, and then it's helminfluxdata.com. Doesn't require any authentication. We're going to go ahead and hit create. Oh, it doesn't like the uppercase. Huh. InfluxDB Helm chart. Helm repo. All right. I should get this past. Yep, it did. Okay, so it doesn't like uppercase, so just be aware of that. Now that we've added the repo, we can come up here to charts, and we can see now that we have this InfluxDB option underneath here. Okay, and we can see all of the charts that the InfluxDB Helm repo has for us. The one that we want is InfluxDB2, so we're going to click on that. I want to verify the version, so it's running 2.7.4, which is perfect. That's what I've got running in my open source version of Kubernetes cluster. So we're going to put it in the monitoring namespace, and we're going to customize the Helm options. So this is our values YAML. So we're looking for persistence. Here it is. And so now what we want to do is actually add in storage class and give it the storage class name, which is Longhorn. Shouldn't need anything else. So we're going to go ahead here and hit next. All right, we're going to go ahead and install it. Now this should install InfluxDB, and it should create a persistent volume using our Longhorn storage class, which is going to point back to our Longhorn installation running on inside of this test Kubernetes cluster that we've created. And then so we should actually be able to see the persistent volume show up in Longhorn. So then there you can actually see the replication and what that looks like as well. One of those strengths of running it instead of an NFS persistent volume as well. Okay, it says that it was completed, so we'll close this. We're going to come over here to workloads. We're going to go to pods. We're going to change the namespace. Oh, so there it is right there. So it looks like it is indeed running InfluxDB. So we're going to come over here to Longhorn. And we should be able to now look on volume. And we see that there is indeed an InfluxDB volume that we can leverage. Okay, and so if we click on it, now you can actually see the volume details from Longhorn. So you can see that it's healthy, it's ready for workload, okay? And you can see where it's attached, how big it is, actual size, the mode that it's in, all right, and anything else like encryption and whatnot. And then you can see here, okay, the 3 nodes that is represented inside it for the replicas, so where it's on all 3 of the workers that we have right now. And then here you could actually take a snapshot if you so choose within Longhorn. If we come back here, now we can see, yeah, we got a little bit more. 1 volume, it is healthy. 3 nodes are schedulable, meaning that we've got 3 nodes that can participate in the cluster. Everything looks good inside of Longhorn. And now we have InfluxDB running within our environment. So what I want to do next is actually come back over here. I want to go to cluster management real quick. And I want to look and just make sure that everything looks good on those other 2. That one brought up the 3rd node for the stage cluster. And the prod cluster brought the 3rd node up as well. All right, now that we have InfluxDB running inside of that cluster, and I'll eventually go and deploy it in that stage and prod environment just so that I keep all 3 of these in line with one another. But the next thing that I want to do is actually go back to that CKA cluster and talk about the reason that I deployed it with 131.7 that you can see here on the screen. Now, it had been a while since I'd gone through an upgrade process with Rancher, and so I wanted to go back through and refamiliarize myself with it once again. A lot of the clusters that I've been deploying with Rancher have been relatively short-lived, and so they get deployed, I do some things with them, and then I destroy them and create another one for the next thing, which is one of the really great benefits of having a tool and a platform like Rancher running inside of my home lab environment. It allows me to do that kind of creation and destruction of Kubernetes clusters very easily within the environment. So as I'm testing things and trying new things, if something breaks, no big deal. I could just wipe out and start a whole new cluster within a matter of minutes. So if we go back here to our cluster management and we click on the Rancher CKA cluster, we can see that we've got the 6 nodes running. All right, so we're going to come up here and we're going to click on the 3 dots and we're going to go edit config. And we are going to scroll down. You can see this is what was set up for the controllers. You can see where I put everything. You can see the cloud init. If you haven't checked out my other videos on how to install a vSphere-based Kubernetes cluster using Rancher. I'll link to the video right here, and you can go back and view it. I've actually got two videos, one version from 2023 and one from 2024. Both are very relevant. Go ahead and watch the 2024 one. It's running a more recent version of Rancher. But what we're going to do is we're going to kind of scroll down here. This is the actual cluster configuration all the way down here at the bottom. You can see Kubernetes version 131.7, RKE2 R1 current, and it's deprecated. So we're going to actually just go ahead and click on 132.4, and we're going to click Save. And that it said it's going to reset any of the add-on values, which I didn't set anywhere. So we're going to go ahead and hit Continue. And now we're going to go into the CKA cluster, and we're going to watch it actually do the upgrade of the Kubernetes version inside of this CKA cluster that I've deployed running Rancher. So we're going to go ahead and just let this run. All right, and just like that, the cluster is upgraded. So now if we come back here to just our cluster management view, we can see that our Rancher CKA cluster is now running 132.4 RKE2 R1. So we are fully updated just like that in no less than, 25 minutes. The whole cluster was upgraded relatively seamlessly for us. So that makes Rancher, really easy from an upgradability perspective. I've already shown you how easy it was in this video to scale out additional nodes, how things like Longhorn automatically bring them in, as well as how easy it is to add authentication via LDAP into your Rancher cluster and then assign permissions to different users based off of their needs and the group's needs that you're, allocating resources to or allowing to have access into the Rancher platform. So we are going to be leveraging these three clusters for a number of activities going forward and videos that I'm creating. I've got a number of projects right now underway, things that I'm expanding upon and capturing in that project SignalWave GitHub repository, and I'm keeping that up to date. So I'd encourage you to go out and clone it to be able to see what I'm doing within the home lab and so that you can try and build your home lab in a similar fashion. We're going to be leveraging these three Kubernetes clusters as we work through a CI/CD pipeline and deploying applications and then promoting them through the stages until they eventually reach a production state. We're going to be leveraging Argo CD for continuous development. I've got GitLab running inside of the home lab now as well. And so I'll show you what I'm doing from a local repository perspective for some of the things that we're doing as well. And so I encourage you, if you're enjoying this content, to please subscribe to the Virtual Elephant YouTube channel, hit that notifications button, and like this video, as well as leave me a comment below. Let me know what you're doing within your home labs or within your test environments that you're leveraging to be able to learn new things and to be able to continue on the path of being a continuous learner. So obviously, whatever you're doing, please reach out to me on Twitter at Chris Mutchler. Let me know what you thought of this video, and I look forward to talking to you next time.